And the next thing she said, what do I do? What do I do, God? And you know what came to her? Cycle, pedal. And she was, cycling around Singapore, so she knew how to do that. So she just went like this, and it'll just go up. But she can't keep up, and then she'll go down, going up and down, it's cycling. And at one point, it's also in the written account, something like a big furniture hit her and lost her consciousness, but she just kept going. And she saw, when she just briefly opened her eyes, she saw like a little metal pipe, and she hung on to it. It turned out to be like the handle of like a cupboard door. She was hanging onto it, but she fell asleep. At one point, she almost wanted to give up. She also remembered about her niece, a little niece that, she had to let go because the wave was so strong. She lost her consciousness, but still hanging onto that handle. And finally got to a pipe. I guess when your wave is up high, you get to be, close to the ceiling. When she regained her consciousness, the water was down to her waist. She thought, I survived. Well, she just retired from her teaching job and was going to enjoy her so-called retirement life. But she promised at that point, I will serve to do anything to help the children, especially children. I will not retire. I will just continue to study Christian Science to bless people. Well, she got off where she was in a little bit drier place and was looking for her family. The whole group of a family, I think 3 of them they couldn't find, and later they, found out they passed on. But she was looking for her niece in particular. When they finally found each other, this niece is not crying, didn't look frightened, and she asked, what happened? She said, Auntie, a ring of light had formed around me and took me right under my mommy. And she just stood there in awe. This child is not having any symptoms like what you call post-traumatic stress syndrome. The ring of light is what she saw. And the mother said, yes, I saw her. I didn't see the light that she says. She came right below me, and I was hanging onto the pipe. I just scooped her up. And is that the ring of light? Can I call it as angels? Another place in this textbook, Mary Baker Eddy says, angels are pure thoughts from God, winged with truth and love, no matter what their individualism may be. So that means that no matter what the form may be, this experience that this little niece had may be the angel guiding her to a place. And it is really God's, if God is love, then really the message has to be love and trying to lead us to safety as well. But what about those people who have passed on? Last year, Japan had experienced that big earthquake, 1 in 1,000 years. And I know the Bible says 1,000 years to God is 1 day, but that's a long time for human. And I just happened to be in Tokyo, trying to walk this magnitude 6 for 15 minutes, trying to find my mother who just went down to the subway. But that's actually, Tokyo didn't lose a lot of people, thanks to the structure, that earthquake resilient, is it called? Structure. And I know you have that in California too. But up in the northern Japan, where tsunami hit, we lost a lot of people. We lost a lot of area. We're also struggling to recover the nuclear power plant that failed. But more about that tsunami, we have lost a lot of people. And we have to also think about those people as well. In this healing account that she writes, Batham is her name, Vatham, if you want to look her up. She doesn't put her little daughter's account there yet, but it's interesting to really think about if we are really coming from that divine mind. And if we are truly spiritual in idea, no one actually have been lost. Physically, we may not see each other, but I just have some experiences that also relate to angels, messages, that gives me this glimpse that perhaps life is not just here, starting from birth to death, but perhaps even before the birth we may have some life, and then after. If it's just after what we call death, then, what were we doing before we came to our parents? It has to be continuous. But 15 years ago, my sister had passed on, and I was there, and she had almost a whole week of being in coma. When I got there, she regained consciousness, and when I went to the hospital, she was brushing her teeth. And the doctor couldn't believe that out of that coma, she came back without any pain. And so we had this almost 2 weeks and a half of getting to know her spiritual identity and was completely at peace. But after 2.5 weeks, one day after seeing a beautiful fireworks, one summer day, she passed on. She just left. And I called my husband, and it was probably 2 in the morning or so, and he was devastated. Not only because he really loved her, but also he knew that he had to tell our girls, who were 11 and 7. When they wake up, he didn't know how to relay this news. And he said, I wish you were here to tell them, But I wasn't there, and said, I don't want to do this over the phone. Well, Mia, when my older one, who's now in New York, when she woke up, she ran straight to my husband's bedroom, and she was really looking bright and happy and said, Papa, Coco, that's the way she called my sister, Coco came to my dream, and she was all in white, very beautiful as usual, and she told me that she was going to be all right. And she said, I was going to be all right. And she said, someday I'll see you. And then just kind of left. Just reported that. And my husband didn't really know how to begin, but just choked up. He was just crying. And my daughter, who discerned what happened at that point, just hugged him. But because of that experience, my older daughter, even to this point, had no sense of loss. But Mom, death is not real. This is 11-year-old speaking to me. So, if that is really the spiritual sense of man, then I would like to keep that as an example, of that we're not actually here and gone and never have life after that. And it's difficult sometimes to face these challenges, and especially when we have a lot of fear. It's not so much that we're fearful of death, but fearful of losing someone. And when we are fearful, it's very difficult to hear this angel message. We need to really see and detect if there's any fear, or sometimes even intellectualism. The people will say, oh, I'm so educated, I don't go into these angel talks. But even even my friend Mike, who was a professor in business, School of Business, he's very, like I said, he was a man of reason. He's not into all sorts of, like a spiritualism, but he just wanted to really understand what man is and how we can bring more healing. Just as I have said, Mr. Takemura in Osaka had a healing. His son recently had a wonderful healing of a cancer in pancreas. And the way he called me one day and said, I want to pray for my son because, this is what doctor had said, it's an advanced stage, it has 4-centimeter mass or something. And he said it's the cutting edge instrument that they have used twice to measure this. And it's, they said it's probably difficult to even treat him. He said, how can I pray? We went back to that spiritual identity. And I'm relating this right here because we would say, we don't know anything about after death, but if we have a right idea about who we are, we may be able to not only apply or the feeling of grief that we have for people who have gone, but also for people who are right here to experience that healing. Well, I asked him, do you know that you have been healed from this incurable disease? And he said yes. And you know that you found out that you are actually, instead of like human parents, you truly come from this divine mind and love? And he said yes. And you know that your son actually comes from the same source as well. You're not his father. And he says, oh, okay, I'm not his father. Well, the son does not study Christian Science, but he said, I just want to hold that thought every time I see him. I am going to only say he is spiritual. Now, not after he died. Now he's spiritual. He's perfect, complete, done, lacking nothing, including health. The son was really angry at that time because he had to quit his job, being a marketing person, to come back to his father's family business, which was to make high school boys' uniform. To make uniforms, you have to measure these students, and most of the time you're on your knees. And these boys don't always stand still, They're not so cooperative. And he was so angry because you have to have these different stages that you have to go. And right now in Japan, a lot of schools are thinking, well, maybe it's better not to have a uniform. Let them wear whatever they want to. We want them to be more creative. So, the business in uniform was really declining. So he was very angry. He was yelling at his father. And both of them, that was kind of a source of eyesore. No, whatever it's called. Contention. Anyway, he began to do this. Every time he saw this, and he said good morning when he came to work, he just thinking inside, perfect child. Perfect one, right here, the child that comes from God. And a couple months later, when they had a next testing, they could not find anything in this son. Mary Baker Eddy explains that view that I was talking about earlier, this way, spirit and its formations are the only realities of being. Matter disappears under the microscope of spirit. Well, under the microscope of spirit, even with this cutting-edge instrument, the cancer disappeared. And the son had acknowledged that one day he felt something left him. Isn't that interesting? Something pulled out of him, and he knew that was the day he was healed, in retrospect. It goes back to that same idea that Christ, the true idea of voicing good, is speaking to even the son. Mr. Takemura is very grateful for this healing, of course, but mainly for the transformation of character, that they get along well. There's no yelling. There's no tension in the family. These are some of the examples. Sometimes we are feeling that we cannot do this all alone. And we have a group of people helping. And I call, I know in America, an occupation called coaching is very popular. Have you ever heard of coaching? And you know what? You can actually have a cheaper coaching. The angels are your coaches. Not the Los Angeles Angels. Not those coaches. But the coaches, to me, is to really every day being conscious that I'm not here alone, but I can listen. And what we call prayer is not really begging something to change, but really to calm our thoughts, to be at peace, and to not be afraid, as Batham was devoid of fear after she had that thought, I shall not die but live. That's really the key to many healings that I have witnessed, especially with children. The parents' fear. When that subsided, the pain subsides.